One of the things I want to talk about are the organizational dynamics of an adaptive organization. Okay? You need a culture that thinks this way, and I'll just give you a very quick graphic. It's about engaging and understanding deeply your customers and the market they're in. And it's no longer optional. And the more people in your organization that are engaged with the customers, the more potential for adaptiveness you have. There is a trend to keep most of the people away from the customer, but that is a trend that we have to break. The more people that are involved and understand the customer and the customer's environment, the more innovation you will get. So using methods to deeply understand and engage, and then we go on to learning and sharing. What I mean by that is we're bringing information from the outside world about what the customer's doing, what the customer is trying to achieve as a business, and what his goals for his business are should be your goals too. You appropriate the customer's business goals. And that's what you deliver. And it'll be important when I come to showing you the common purpose in a minute. So learning and sharing. Customer, the market they're in. If a customer says, I'm buying your product so it gives me differentiation, increased market share, well, that's how you test if your product's working. Not just that it met the spec. Leading and choosing. And this is enabling much lower down in the organization. Managers and staff, having seen the threats and opportunities, they can take action against those. But decision making is much lower down. And they can decide and prioritize which of those things they want to address. Because they've been through the leading and choosing, and they've chosen a handful of things to go for. And we heard again that phrase said this morning, just a handful of things, and committing the whole organization to them and getting them done instead of 20, 30, 40, 50 projects. Nothing gets done. There's that old saying, start finishing and stop starting. Absolutely applies at the business level. And then finally, improving and adapting. You can improve what you do, but adapting is changing what you do and how you do it. And that's how you stay in touch with the business in the outside world. There is what I call a climate or a culture. I prefer the word climate because a climate is how a team works within that climate. The culture of the business might be very different. All right? And this is the really big thing I want to say. The culture of the organization doesn't prevent you from doing agile or those any things locally. You can create a local climate, the local culture. All right? And you can sustain that until that spreads, until that changes the whole organization. Because there's one thing that I learned is that all cultures start as a climate. Okay? Now, it might have started a long time ago, but what keeps a culture in place are all the rules, the regulations, the rewards, the recognition, and that is about keeping the culture the same. So therefore, the design of work, the design of the organization is really what needs to alter in the right places to make this early climate, this team climate, become the company culture. This is the dynamic. We can see in the middle there's common purpose. And what I'm talking about here is big picture collaboration. Unless you have big picture collaboration with all your staff, they are not going to innovate. And what do I mean by big picture innovation? We are discussing the business problems, not just people who are talking about teams and working with each other. No, what business problems are we trying to solve? And everybody's involved in that. And I've been involved in setting up a lot of big picture collaboration forums, which happen every week. And people go away and work on that and come back. And they feed back what are the threats and opportunities. They become the eyes of the chameleon. So what we are doing in an adaptive business is interleaving continuous improvement, because we still want to improve that, with continuous change. So let me just show you that dynamic. We saw earlier on that the people in the business that do the real work need to be engaging and deeply understanding the customer and their environment. They then need to come back and say, well, what sense do we make of this? Is this an opportunity? Is it a threat? Do we need to respond in this way, or do we leave it? And that throws up a whole set of ideas of what we might innovate. But then you need to choose. And that's when in the leading and choosing, and leading is done lower down. So there's recommendations to the management team. We want to invest in developing this, whatever it is that you've discovered. Now, for the most part, there are going to be improvements and there'll be no-brainers because there's no strategic change to your products and services. But every so often, and more often than you would imagine, there's something that's a real gem. You don't sit around and say, no, we don't do that sort of thing when there's a demand from the customers because you've sensed it. Your staff have sensed it. This is before the market is asking for it. You're using customer intelligence from your staff to look for those new opportunities, new niches. And then you decide, okay, we need to do this. So then you can see there's a decision point. We know what the common purpose is. We can either improve this, no fundamental change, but actually we need to have a bigger change. And that involves maybe introducing some new tools, new measurement systems, a new product design. It could be anything. So that needs a little bit more work. So you would use something like this. You would design and experiment with whatever that new innovation is. And agile people, skilled in agile, can do that very well. We've seen the opportunity. It meets our purpose. Right, let's develop something. This is not a team that's set up to do just this. This is you working in the normal day job. You're now working on this design team. And you take turns in that. And then you say, right, now we've got this. And now you need to engage back into the business. Saying, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Remember that big picture story. We've now identified what this is going to be. We've now tested it. There's a prototype. We now want to start deploying this in a much more systematic way. And then you need people to either train or help people adopt that new way of working sometimes, new practices, new measurement system, or new products or new services. And then it changes the organization. There's a step change. That's what those rings mean. There's a step change. And now we've got to improve that until something bigger comes along. And that switching and interleaving between change and improvement is natural. And it's the business opportunities that switch that on or off. And it's completely on demand. But there's one big thing. The managers who run the day-to-day business need to know that they might have to run the business differently, especially if you're introducing Agile, because they'll try to run it in their old way. They don't know any different. So they need space, time, and learning to adjust to new ways of working. Otherwise, whatever you bring in will be